Fantastic. So again, the art of smart advantage, playing advantage. Obviously, it's a law, but we want to get a more strategic view on the referee's role and how we can play advantage that adds value to the game and doesn't take away value. So we'll start off. What is advantage? Obviously, there's some questions that have come up in various sessions that I've ran in person and online, and from things I've already seen online. There's the concept of continuity, but we have to balance that out with making clear decisions for the teams. Obviously, playing advantage just for the sake of continuing the game clouds the player's perception of what the infringement was in the first place and why the referee stuck his or her arm out for advantage. From what are we playing advantage? Mainly scrum, knock-on, or penalty infringement. For whom? So just who are the non-offending players and why? What's the point of putting our arm out and playing advantage in various situations? So that's what we'll cover this evening. We'll start with knock-on advantage. Again, it's a little bit simpler for most, but still important. If we get this right, again, like I said earlier, we can add a lot of value to a game. But if we get it wrong and we either don't play the right advantage or play inappropriate advantage for knock-on, we can take value away from the game and actually end up contributing to chaos in a particular game environment. So some key questions we ask ourselves primarily, is there time and space? Has the non-offending team gathered the ball, and do they have time and space to do something? The context, obviously the game situation, the time in the game, the location on the field, and the relative strength of each team is pretty important, especially when we're talking about knock-on advantage. Obviously the ultimate unsuccessful outcome would be a scrum. In terms of the advantage, if a team is strong or weak at scrum time, that may play into whether or not you decide to even explore advantage in the first place. And ultimately, the I guess could be tied to time and space is there a chance of a line break or a pressure relieving kick from the non-offending team? If none of those conditions exist, we can always ask ourselves, what is the point of playing advantage? And again, just to be clear, if a team's knocked the ball on, an infringement's already occurred, advantage is not a mechanism to simply avoid a stoppage. It's to allow the non-offending team to avoid a stoppage should they so choose. So we'll start off with clip number one. Again, I've emailed these clips and this presentation out to everyone. So if it does come out a little bit choppy on your end, you can definitely download those clips from the Dropbox links I sent to your email. Be in mind, it might be in your junk mail, and you can follow along and play it at home if you find that the clips are a little bit choppy. Clip number one. So knock-on comes in here right around the halfway line from the red team, obviously regathered by the non-offending blue team. Obviously, blue team's able to regather and execute a tactical kick downfield where they're able to execute that kick free of pressure, and it ends up finding space. So effectively, they've been able to apply pressure onto the other team as they wish. So in this case, advantage over. I'll play that sequence through one more time. So one thing I really enjoy about this clip from the referee, the knock-on actually happens, there's a little bobble on the floor almost immediately after the player's tackled. And the referee actually gives himself time and space to be able to assess the situation, has a little look over his shoulder. If we could make this even better, we would love the referee to turn north-south with his shoulder facing the obviously now the blue team is attacking the defensive goal line, so they can assess all of this open space back here. So obviously there's no blindside cover, so there's a chance of a line break on the left side. There's some tired defenders walking, no sweeper, so huge opportunity. And obviously right at this moment here, the halfback actually is able to get the ball to a player who's not under any sort of major pressure, and he's able to spot the space downfield. Effectively, this is the freedom to make a tactical decision. And instead of attacking, he chooses to put in a space-finding kick, which gets, apologies, I'll go back, which gets in behind the defenders, again with the absence of a sweeper, and ends up creating quite a significant tactical advantage for the non-offending blue team. So again, as soon as we see this ball here bounce in behind the defense, there's no chance of a counterattack or retrieval from the red team. We could call advantage over. And just on that, before we move on to the next clip, just bearing in mind, if players do kick, just waiting before we call advantage over, because obviously if we call it too soon, or if red is able to miraculously charge the kick down and recover, and we set advantage over, it puts us in a negative light vis-a-vis the players. So just giving ourselves the time and space, and when there's a kick, just waiting that extra second to make sure that there's not going to be an immediate counterattack. And again, if there's a pass being thrown, same scenario, just wait until the pass goes to hand before we call advantage over in these types of scenarios. In a knock-on advantage, another situation, time and space for the non-offending team to relieve or apply pressure. So if we see that a kick or pass is being forced, we don't necessarily have to blow the whistle right away, but just waiting to see the outcome for 1 or 2 seconds adds a lot of value. Of course, not playing advantage in hope. If we see that a player is clearly under pressure from the non-offending team, it may be safer just to blow the whistle in most cases. So obviously knock on from the team in the orange and black stripes. Apologies, I'll go back to the clip and I'll just pause it at certain points so everyone can see. So in this moment where we see the knock-on comes from the orange and white stripes ball carrier, it's immediately regathered, but the referee actually does a good job of having a quick scan. There is space. The sweeper in the line is very, very close to his defensive line. So there is a fair bit of real estate here, and obviously a ton of space out wide. But we ask ourselves the question, does the ball carrier actually have time and space to make a decision? Immediately he starts to run sideways, and that's a good indicator. Obviously schools coaches are always shouting at their players not to run sideways. Often when we see players running sideways, it's because they don't have time and space, or they don't see time and space. Otherwise, and in more simpler terms, they're under pressure. So referee decides to explore a little bit here, waits. Obviously, there's nearly a turnover, and this player has to make an however you slice it, an illegal or an incredible clean out, but it might be a good idea just to blow the whistle here in before when we see the player running sideways, as you know, if the orange team could appeal for a penalty decision, and obviously we don't want to be penalizing the team for whom we were playing advantage. And what also puts a stamp on the fact that we have to end the advantage is the kick ends up right in the hands of a waiting player who ends up turning a situation where his team was obviously had given away possession through the knock-on, and now they're immediately back on the front foot. So again, keeping in mind the time and space, we don't have to put our arm out right away in these situations. We see the players just regathered, take a breath, get yourself back to north-south. Again, facing east-west, we can't tell where the space is. The touchline, we know there's space beyond the touchline, but the players obviously can't use it. So just making sure that we rotate our shoulders, look towards the space that the non-offending team wants to play for. And if we see that or feel that they can't play it or unable to or unwilling to, it might be best just to blow our whistle. Because a couple things could happen here. Obviously, if this player makes contact with an opposition player with a shoulder and it ends up being dangerous foul play, we still have to sanction it, even though we were playing advantage for the white team here. So just being in mind, keep it in mind rather, that when a team's under pressure, playing advantage has to have a worthwhile risk. And again, from a referee's point of view, the only reason we would take a little bit of risk is if we can see that the team has a chance to apply significant pressure or relieve significant pressure. This is a pretty neutral situation with no space for anyone, so I don't think it could be argued that a whistle here would be the worst thing. Sometimes we get lucky. If this kick ends up working out, we can call advantage over. But again, the longer we play, especially a knock-on advantage, the more scrutiny we can put ourselves under. So that's effectively why we're calling it playing smart advantage, getting away from the technicality of what the law says. The law says advantage can be tactical or territorial. We all know that, but putting ourselves in a position to read the game and obviously add value and take away from the chaos by creating the space that the players are able and want to use. So once again, knock on before putting the arm out, have a look, see where the space is. If you feel there's time and space, put your arm out. If that space shuts down or we have risk of an infringement from the non-offending team, just blow the whistle and avoid any what we would call a referee assist for a penalty that we could have avoided, or potentially points that should not have been scored. Because again, if we give away a penalty here and we penalize white, orange obviously can kick 3 points, and we turn a situation where white had an advantage into a net 3-point loss against. So just before we shift to penalty advantage, I just want to go back to knock-on advantage, and I'll just throw it over to the group. If anyone wants to weigh in or throw out an idea, please don't hesitate. There's an unmute function on your bar that you can use. So I'll just pause for a few moments and allow anyone who feels like weighing in with a question, comment, anecdote to go ahead and do so.
Hey, Chris, it's Kevin here.
Yeah, Kevin.
If you have a situation where you have a scrum penalty or a knock-on advantage, and you're playing the advantage, and the team that committed the knock-on then commits a penalty that kills the knock-on advantage, would you go back to the first advantage, or would you immediately call a penalty?
So if I understand the question, it would be the non-offending team has gathered the ball, and the original offending team, the team that knocked the ball on, has infringed again?
Yeah, but this time a penalty.
Again, I would go back to that concept of time and space. So if there's a chance of a line break or a pressure relieving kick, and that team who's already offended has, obviously, they were offside. So if they were in front of the ball and the players that had knocked on the ball, or rather the teammates of the team who's knocked on the ball are in front, and they prevent the non-offending team from doing what they want, obviously we'd have to blow that penalty. Or if we feel, if you feel that that there was some advantage to be played, and there was, a tackler not rolling away decision or an off feed at the subsequent breakdown, by all means, I would say that blowing the penalty would be the better option. But the only grain of salt, Kevin, I would say to take that with is, if you are playing some exploratory advantage, meaning teams are going across the field or they're going backwards, and then the other team just happens to slip, or the tackler gets caught on the wrong side, and nothing really was going to come anyway, it's actually quite hard not to blow the penalty. But the challenge to the referee would be, in review, I suppose, would be, well, maybe we don't explore that advantage to begin with, and we don't end up with an awkward decision of penalty versus knock on, if that makes sense. Cool. Does that somewhat answer your question, Kevin?
Yeah, no, that's good. Thanks.
Cool. And yeah, and like I said, often we can avoid those situations if we're playing the right advantage. And if we know we're playing the right advantage, hey, there's lots of time and space for the non-offending team. There's a chance at a line break or a chance to apply a relief pressure, and someone who's offside or off their feet has denied that opportunity. Easy penalty for us. And we see it a lot in situations, especially off kickoffs, when teams are, or kicks, Gary Owen up and under situations where teams are competing for the ball, and we see a knock on come off a hand, and then there's all kinds of players in front. Have a bit of empathy for the non-offending team first and foremost. Do they have a chance to do something? If that's the case, play some advantage. If it's denied, penalize. Of course, if it's denied illegally. But if we play kind of a speculative advantage, maybe it's best to have blown the whistle early. Cool. So if there's anything else on knock-on advantage, we can come back to it. I'm just conscious of the time. I want to move on to penalty advantage, which is arguably a much lower percentage conversion rate, so to speak, from a referee. And we'll get into the why a little bit in a few moments here. But couple of key questions to ask, and they're slightly different because obviously a penalty advantage means different things. Teams can do more with a penalty if we blow the whistle. Obviously, they can elect to have a scrum, they can kick to touch and have a line out, they can play quickly, they can elect for 3 points. So it kind of changes the ball game altogether, because a scrum advantage, we might be a little bit liberal with playing it, because again, the outcome is just a scrum. Teams obviously can't score any points if we blow the whistle straight away. The attacking team, effectively, we ask our question, where are we on the field? Are we in the attacking half? If so, does the attacking team, who's regathered the ball or is about to regather the ball, have a chance to score a try? Because like I said, if we know that they can kick 3 points, kick to touch and have a line out and gain territory as well as possession, or have a chance to lock in the defense with a scrum, or play quickly from a quick whistle, the only question in my mind, and the only reason to play advantage from a non-offending team's point of view, is the opportunity to score a try. The next step down, so to speak, from a penalty is not advantage. So we'll show a clip later on where, and as a referee, sometimes we're a bit on the fence, or, ooh, does that matter? Has that infringement affected the game or the non-offending team's ability to play? If the answer is no, we definitely don't play advantage. If you wouldn't blow the whistle, you wouldn't play advantage. It's not this halfway between play on and penalty. And again, do we have the risk of confusing the players? So early in the game, if we're not sure of where we are in the field, and if there's opportunity to score, the best thing often is blowing the whistle quickly, because if we don't play away from the original mark, obviously that's another option for the non-offending team. They can take a quick tap and potentially lock in some defenders as they have to be 10 meters back. They can elect to have their 3 points, or again, they can just kick for territory and possession with that kick into the lineout. So just some food for thought there. So clip number one, again, at risk of being overly prescriptive, penalty advantage is only in situations when we would actually blow the whistle. So we'll run through that clip one more time. I'll just pause. So here we see that there's going to be a contested ruck, blue going a little bit sideways, black defender getting over the ball or attempting to get over the ball, ends up hands on the ground a little bit. You know, we can debate off feet, but as soon as the player's hands hit the floor, the referee puts their arm out and the player's immediately cleaned out, and the halfback is pretty much undisrupted and is able to play the ball as he would have in spite of that defender being, you know, hands on the ground or off feet. So again, just the referee takes away their time and space by putting the arm out straight away. So again, having that confidence in yourself as a referee to have a look at something, and the first question we ask is that an infringement? Has that affected the non-offending team's time and space to play? And if it's the answer is not really, well, then we don't put our arm out. So in other words, advantage is not a mechanism to buy time for the referee. Again, being comfortable just doing nothing. If the ball's still available and we don't feel that an infringement from a tackler or an arriving player, especially the breakdown, has affected the time and space, then we just play on. And again, what might help here from a refereeing point of view, and I say this a lot, but squaring up and getting north-south, so having the eyes facing the defense, that way we can see the ball, we can see where the space is, and we don't feel as anxious, because as soon as we walk forward from an east-west position, everything gets closer, the ball gets closer, the players get closer, and that takes away our time and space to make an informed decision. So assuming we have a clear and obvious infringement, so a penalty infringement has occurred, first question is where we are on the field. So here we see side entry takes away a quick ball opportunity for black by the gold team here. Referee's first instinct is to stick the arm out. Again, I would say the east-west position here, rather than the north-south, has taken away the referee's ability to realize that we're on the defensive side of halfway. There are a few attackers, but they're miles behind the ball. They're in no position really to support. And we have pretty much an entire forward pack of a defensive line clearly established. The A or the rock or the guard is already in position. So there's not really a lot of benefit to playing advantage. And we see, again, running sideways is an indicator of no time and space. Tenze trying to look for a hole, is forced to throw a desperate pass. Again, a forward pass or a questionable pass, and a player ends up getting tackled in isolation. So even though they might have gone forward 8 or 10 meters, they're immediately tackled. If we played on here, there's potentially a turnover. So again, on this side of halfway, the higher percentage play, so to speak, from referee is just to blow the whistle. Because again, unless we think black are going to score a try from here, especially in most club competitions nowadays, in any division, most kickers can, especially from the 15-meter line, put a ball at least 25 meters into touch, and that gives them territory as well as possession. So again, really positive positioning here on this first phase. Second phase, we get that walking laterally towards the ball. It's not where we need to be. We have to fight that urge to go to east-west and break north-south. And then we maybe, if we feel the infringements material and it slowed the ball down, we bang in the whistle straight away. And again, just to explore the benefit of blowing the whistle right away, if the ball gets killed here, the halfback from black is actually able to trap all of these players in this space and actually create an option if he so chooses. However, he's about 54 meters from his line, and he has no support. So unless he's going to go through untouched, which is extremely unlikely from 54 meters out, it's probably best just to blow the whistle, because they're probably going to kick for touch from this position anyway. And going back to my last point, the point of blowing a penalty is to change behavior. And one thing we don't want to do is confuse the players, especially early in the game. If you've blown a penalty, we want them to understand what the penalty was for so they can make the adjustment and ultimately help their team. The body language of the players here, I don't know if you want to call it indifference or confusion, but the next thing they realize is, well, they're just going to get back in the line and get ready to defend. So again, where we are in the field, if we want to take the high percentage option on a penalty advantage, it's the first question to ask. Second question we ask, where we are in the field, but what's better for the non-defending team? So I guess reinforcing the earlier point, we have a scrum again on the defensive 10-meter line, so 60 meters from the opposition line. Best options to blow the whistle straight away. Again, the attack are super deep. They'd have to do something absolutely miraculous to create a try scoring opportunity from here. Here they can quick tap. They can have the option to kick for territory and possession. And I have heard someone who I showed this clip say, oh, well, Chris, what if they end up making a line break 20 meters upfield or 30 meters upfield? I'll throw that challenge back to you. Do they want to have had to break down the defense to make a 30-meter line break, or would they rather just you blow the whistle and then kick the ball 30 meters down the field, and then they can launch their attack from the 22 as opposed to launching their attack from here? Very few teams score tries from set pieces in this position, especially 5 meters from the touchline. Maybe if this scrum's in the middle of the field and we see a move coming on from the non-defending team, we can explore it. But again, even if we do explore it, the expectation is we come back to this position. And again, to not bewilder the offending team so they can understand what's going on. Unless we see there's a huge opportunity to score a try, it's probably safer just to blow the whistle. Effectively, the goal from a referee to play penalty advantage is to have the possibility of advantage being gained. And again, advantage is pretty much points from a penalty or significant possession and territory, not just territory. Because again, if you blow them the penalty, they can kick for touch and have the throw into the line out rather than just kicking for touch and giving the ball to the other team. A little bit of extra I'll throw in there is, especially at scrum time, if we blow the penalty at the right time, the players will get the message. The black team now gains confidence in the referee because you got what matters in their mind. The gold team now understands where the line is, so to speak. Again, going back to where on the field. So again, I did mention the risk of playing a penalty advantage. We feel pressured to say advantage over, especially if we have someone keeping stats and tracking our percentages. We can, as referees, artificially inflate those stats by just calling advantage over. So penalty advantage comes in inside the defensive 10-meter line. So we're 60 plus meters from the line. Team decides to kick. Again, they chose to kick the ball. If this was a scrum advantage, they've had the chance to realign, and we might be able to call advantage over. But since it's a penalty advantage, let's go back to where the infringement happened. Infringement happens right here for a high shot. The non-offending team is probably in their best interest for them to just kick the ball into touch over here and get the line out. The other side of that is, especially for dangerous foul play, like a high tackle, if you want that to stop in the game and have fewer infringements, it's best to let the defense understand the consequences of that infringement. So if you blow the whistle here, high tackle, black number 8, and then there's a kick for touch and the team effectively gets punished, that behavior is a higher likelihood of changing rather than you going advantage over and black potentially getting an opportunity to apply pressure against the non-offending team. Because if we look at this, I know we don't referee in still frame, but a moment ago it was penalty advantage for gold. Now black's got the ball in the exact same spot with support and a fractured defensive line. So again, making it simple for us, where are we on the field? If we're in the defensive half, we would probably recommend you blow the whistle. And sometimes we talk ourselves into, oh, I don't want to blow the whistle. Let's play advantage. Again, the confusion of the players is often a source of frustration towards the referee, and often it makes the referee frustrated, and it makes the job less enjoyable. So penalty advantage being played, again, defensive half. There's not a ton of space. Teams goes laterally across the field. There's a small net gain. Referee decides to go all the way back. And just look at the body language of the players. This is 30 frustrated players. The blue team obviously confused because the infringement wasn't clear. There was an offside in the B channel here. And since the referee explored advantage, the argument can be made by the blue team, well, what happened? The white team obviously is trying to rush towards the mark to take a quick tap, but no referee in their right mind is going to sprint back and make a mark and basically catch the blue team out here. We've given the white team an opportunity to play advantage. It wasn't the best advantage. If we wanted to allow the quick tap, we have to blow the whistle straight away. It's not good practice to be sprinting back to the mark, because if we're sprinting back to the mark, we better do that for both teams, and we better have situations that appear to be equitable, because blue could easily form an opinion that you're trying to help white score against them. So again, risk versus reward. What's the benefit for the referee? What's the benefit for the white team of playing advantage from this position? Again, a little bit of space way out here, but 3 players from this kind of depth, in all likelihood, are not going to exploit this kind of space, especially with cover coming across and on the defensive side of halfway. So we've looked at examples exclusively in the defensive half, because again, just hammering that point home is that's a super low percentage advantage, and it will frustrate you as a referee as well as potentially both sets of players. But in the attacking half, the answer isn't always play advantage. Again, just like a scrum advantage, taking that split second, square the shoulders up to the goal line, ask yourself, is there time and space for the non-offending team? Because effectively, what do they want in the attacking half? Well, they either want the 3 points, or they want to score a try, or they want to kick it to the corner. They don't want to get absolutely rocked by a defender and have to pick themselves up off the ground and reset their focus. So pause here. So a high shot comes in from the team in the red and white hoops. Referee immediately decides to play advantage. Again, having the shoulders squared to the goal line of obviously where the attacking team wants to go. We might argue that there's a chance for a chip kick in here with no sweeper playing for the red and white team, but we realize, is there a lot of time and space? We have 3 support players standing upright, very close to the ball, not really in a position to clean out. 9's having to direct a little bit of traffic. There's a pick and go on here. Again, the defense is just able to further reinforce their position. It's slow ball. 10 creates a little bit of space. There's a debatable obstruction. He's got players in front of him. You're almost obligated to blow the whistle in the situation, because if we let green score from this position with all kinds of players in front, and 10 manages to find a hole somewhere in here, we end up potentially spotlighting ourselves. And now, especially because it was dangerous foul play, we want to be able to communicate that message to the players now with actions, not words. Now the referee is going to have to explain to that player at some point that that's not on, because there wasn't a quick whistle and there wasn't a clear indication that that tackle was dangerous, and that was the reason for the stoppage. So again, give yourself time and space as a referee. So high shot coming in there. Apologies, I'll go back to that clip. So when the high shot comes in, we're right on the 22. Not the worst place, territory in the world to play advantage, but even if you decide to stick your arm out immediately and you react to it, just turn your body, see where the space is, and decide just how much advantage you want to explore here. Because there's a couple of risks here. We don't want a retaliatory action from green to potentially have a penalty reversal, which is never a good situation for anyone. And we don't want red to feel like they're made to defend unnecessarily, because there's not really anything on here with slow ball, etc. Of course, this could change if obviously the goal line is way over here. But if we imagine this white line being the goal line, this isn't the worst place to play advantage, because we see that even with slow ball and a bit of dominance in the point of contact, green has an opportunity to be able to grind the ball over this line here. However, from a refereeing point of view, going back to that squaring your shoulders up north-south, we'd be in a position to push these offside defenders back and actually create that space. So again, being north-south not only gives us the benefit of seeing where the space is to see if advantage is even worthwhile, but it also gives us the ability to create space after we've played advantage. So whether this be a penalty or a knock-on advantage, we want to get this player, and this player as far away from this space as we possibly can get them, so the non-defending team can play the ball. So again, another attacking half penalty advantage example, this time going back to that question, is there time and space to score a try? So So here our mentality is slightly different. There's been an intercept, a massive line break. Blue still has support. Black is under heaps of pressure. There's an opportunity, and we end up getting inside the 22 with momentum and support. A try is potentially on. Referee does well not to blow straight away because a try is still on. Shortly after, non-offending team is able to score the try. And we don't have to stop the game and potentially frustrate the attacking team who had dominance and momentum. So again, good situation to realize where he is, good north-south positioning to start, is able to identify the goal line is right there. There aren't many defenders and there's support. So good opportunity to put the arm out. Again, I would challenge the referee to square up to the defense, maybe push the pillars back and increase the space that the non-offending team is entitled to at the ensuing ruck. But again, these are the situations close to the goal line in the attacking half where advantage is likely to come off. And just as a final point before we close off on the clips for penalty advantage, in the attacking half, if we have a penalty infringement, we decide to play advantage, work very hard, and we must work very hard as a group not to call advantage over. Because again, if 3 points are on offer or an opportunity to kick to the corner and have an attacking lineout opportunity, calling advantage over does two things. It frustrates the living daylights out of the attacking team for the referee applying the advantage law poorly. And it allows the defensive team to negatively stop the attacking move through an infringement. And obviously that's not the brand of rugby we want to promote. So again, even when we're playing advantage in the attacking half, the amount of work that the attacking team actually had to do to score, even from 5 meters out, was pretty significant. So by all means, I don't want to discourage people from playing penalty advantage, but do have a look to see if the chance of a try is actually on. The other risk of playing advantage in the attacking half, and again, it's risk reward, it's not all bad. I'll just go back to that time off situation. So this, and just as an ending point, this is a team of three moment to consider as well. Is, you know, obviously the officials are going to discuss a grounding or something similar pertaining to the in-goal decision. The AR and the referee should open that conversation with, we were playing penalty advantage. If this doesn't come off, or if it's not a try, we're going to go back to the original infringement. So it definitely is a risk. If we can get a try out of these situations, obviously it's good for the non-offending team. It's good for the referee, good for the game. We want to see tries being scored. But again, not forgetting that we are playing advantage, because if we, for some reason, forgot, there was penalty advantage and awarded a scrum to the white team for a knock-on, again, we're letting them off the hook, and we're potentially opening ourselves up to valid criticism from the blue team. So just before we sum up, does anyone want to weigh in, questions, comments, anecdotes on penalty advantage? Okay, well, if there are questions that end up coming up in your thoughts later on, by all means, feel free to reach out or join the conversation on the BC Rugby Referees Facebook group or on the Coach Logic team room, as there were a few advantage clips from last weekend's fixtures brought up on the feed. So again, just a summary, if you will. Scrum advantage, obviously our main factor is there time and space for the non-offending team to either achieve a line break or a clearing kick. And obviously we want a low risk of a penalty from the offending team. If there is a penalty from the offending team and these conditions existed, we have to give it. If these conditions were maybe, and there's a penalty from the from the offending team, again, if we don't give that penalty, we potentially open ourselves up to criticism. So I guess the question to throw back to ourselves is, why are we hoping for advantage to come off? So advantage has got to be clear and real. There's got to be time and space and an opportunity for a line break. And if the offending team infringes and prevents these two conditions, we have to give the penalty, because we cannot allow the offending team to dictate the advantage of the non-offending team, illegally, of course. Penalty advantage, biggest factor, where are we in the field? Attacking half is best. Possibility of a try has to exist, and there has to be time and space. And again, an indication of no time and space would be players moving laterally or running sideways. A couple of resources, and I'll show you a tool just before we sign off. So the BC Rugby Education YouTube channel, I'll put this session up on there, and there's all of our education, coach, referee, and otherwise are all up there. It has changed. We've put all of our match footage that's not on Coach Logic onto BC Rugby match videos, just so those things are a little bit less clouded. Obviously, the bcrugby.com referee resources, you can either use that URL or just Google search. All of our materials are up on there, and exercises and things you can use to practice off the field. The Facebook group, as I previously mentioned, and the Coach Logic Match Review Hub and Discussion Room. And just before we go, one of the resources I've just popped up on the website, I'm just going to share my screen. There we go. So one of the things we popped up on the wonderful on the website, if we go to bcrugby.com, is a little tool that I developed, and there was a little bit of plagiarism from my actually my referee coach Sean McDonough, who is doing a bit of work with me with MLR this year, as well as who was a keynote contributor to our conference last week. He developed a bit of resource called Expected Outcomes. I expanded it to include the topic of advantage, as well as a couple of others. So that can be found in the off-field section. And again, it's the expected outcomes training. If you click on the link, it will download the file for you. Okay, I'll just see if I can pop the screen open. There we go. So here is the tool. There's a couple of sections of it. Some of you've seen the possession outcomes training. We won't go through that now, but there's an advantage outcomes training. You can watch one of the games you've refereed or a game on TV, and this just takes free time. There is a scrum or penalty kick advantage. You just indicate what it is. You would indicate the position on the park and the phases. If it was slow ball, indicate slow ball. If it's quick ball, indicate quick ball. And obviously, if it ends in advantage over, click it, write advantage over. If it ends in no advantage, write no advantage. And if there's a referee effect that isn't the best, positive or negative, you can write it down over here. So it's just a little training session to get you thinking about where the advantage is played and the likelihood of success in context. So a little tool that can be used just to practice awareness and game understanding. So we'll end it here. If there's any questions, comments, concerns, feel free to get in touch with me. If you want to take advantage of any of the resources, by all means, download them, share them. They're yours to use. And if you need any support or help using those tools that I showed you or anything else that's up online, don't hesitate to get in touch. Thanks everyone for coming on the call, and we will hopefully see you on the field soon.